Justice has finally been served for Classic and Cincere in the case against the adopted parents Jacqueline and Trezell West. And in today's video, we're going to talk about that justice and the verdict. Hello Sofa Squad, and welcome back to the sofa, which is right behind me with Mr. Roscoe. He's all snuggly wuggly because it is very early in the morning when I'm recording this. As you heard from my little intro, we're going to be talking about the verdict in the case against Jacqueline and Trezell West, the adoptive parents of Classic and Cincere, their birth names. Jacqueline and Trezell renamed them to Orrin and Orson. I always like to start off by utilizing their birth names because that is their real names, right? That's what their birth mother gave them. And so there's that. Now, there will be a reference in this video and the things we're going to be going over and reviewing as Orrin and Orson. That's what the media and, that's kind of what they're known publicly as. So just know that as we go forward that we're really talking about Classic and Cincere. Okay, so that being said, what we're going to do is it's going to be kind of like a short video here. If you followed me for a very long time, then you know like this case blew up back in 2020 when it happened. We were following that, and then it just kind of fizzled out. The judges, all these people had a very big lockdown on information all the way through the trial. Well, what was allowed to be put out there. YouTubers couldn't rebroadcast anything or anything like that. So, but finally, justice was served. So what we'll do is I'm going to put some clips up here, and we're going to talk about it. And then at the end of the video, I will give my overall thoughts on everything. So let's go ahead and jump on in. Okay, now real quick, so we're all on the same page here. Jacqueline and Trezell West reported Orrin and Orson, Classic and Cincere, missing in December 21st, 2020, and they were eventually arrested in March of 2022 and charged with the boys' deaths. Now, when this first went down, there was lots of red flags, and especially when Jacqueline and Trezell did an interview. And if you didn't watch it, I have videos of it in my playlist. This video is attached to the playlist, but we're gonna watch like the first few seconds of it, because when they came out with this interview, everybody was like, what?
We just want to thank everyone in the community for all the support we've seen. We felt so helpless. And seeing everybody out here really looking and helping out really means a lot.
So, tell us what happened the night that kids went missing.
Okay.
From our yard.
Okay. It was cold. I was gonna make a fire. There's a lot of wood in this area right here next to our house.
Wow, yeah, a lot to unpack there. So again, I've gone over the video. We're not going to do a deep dive into that part right there, but just those first few seconds of her swaying, then the reporter, tell us what happened in both of them. From the yard. I mean, it's bad. And then going into this rehearsed story and her swaying, I thought she was going to knock over like a damn tree in a tornado or something. I mean, it was bad. So this came out, and people were like, what? Now, also on this video, the family, the natural born family of Orrin and Orson, they are standing off to the edge, right? And they get in like a kind of yelling match eventually, because they're pissed. Like they know something's up, right? Like a lot of people did. Now, another thing that was of interest during this thing here, when he was talking with the reporters and whatnot, and he takes such ownership of them, like, those are our boys, that's their names, those are our boys. It was very weird, and to know now at this point that they already knew that the boys were dead, and to speak that way like they're property. Now, it doesn't matter if they're alive or not. To speak of them as property is not right, obviously, but it just makes it a whole other level where you're like, this is so bad, it's so icky. I can only imagine what it would have been like to be there in person during this interview and see some of the nuances that we miss on camera, because there were so many of them on camera, right? So that being said, let's look at the charges real quick that they were eventually hit with after the year-long investigation. Okay, so as you see here, they're hit with 3 charges for each boy, and then a false report of an emergency charge. And so second degree M, involuntary M, child abuse, conspiracy to commit M, second degree M, child abuse. So multiple things here that, on the stand it would play out. Luckily, some of the other children that lived in the home, Jacqueline and Trezell's children, got up there and testified, and I really don't think they would have gotten these convictions without that testimony. So let's watch a real quick clip of some of the verdict being read.
We, the jury, impaneled to try the above entitled case, find the defendant, Trezell West, guilty of felony, to wit, murder in the second degree. We, the jury, impaneled to try the above entitled case, find the defendant, Jacqueline West, guilty of felony, to wit.
Now, did you notice how, number one, Jacqueline had nothing on her face, right? But did you see Trezell, where it was almost like his face had this, like, and again, I don't know him, but it's like his face had this, like, I'm either getting ready to cry or I'm seething with anger coming through. Again, I don't know what he looks like when he cries or any of that type of stuff, so that's just my interpretation of it. But it was like, his face twitching and all this kind of stuff. I was like, oh yeah. I mean, I think he's got a nasty temper, and I think that's kind of how we ended up in this situation. Now let's listen to one more clip here of the reporter talking.
Trezell and Jacqueline West found guilty on 5 out of 7 counts that they were charged with. As we heard in the courtroom audience.
Now, did you also notice his lawyer sitting there, like, wait, just shaking her head, I'm just like, come on, right? And we'll talk about my thoughts on, like, the evidence and stuff like that in a second, but what I want to do right now is just kind of quickly go over what took place with the verdict and the charges. Okay, I'm just going to put these back up here as I read through this. Now, again, as you heard, the things that they were found guilty on. Okay, so now when it comes to Orrin, they were found guilty of the murder second degree, involuntary manslaughter, and the willful cruelty to a child and false report of an emergency. Now when it came to Orson, they were both found guilty of the willful cruelty to a child and false report of an emergency. Now, so what happened is the jury ended up getting hung up on a conspiracy to commit murder and murder in second degree in regards to Orson. And basically they were like, look, we ain't gonna be able to, we can't do this right here. Now they do face up to life in prison for these charges, for the ones that they got. So this is good. Now sentencing is going to be July 13th at 8:30. So, hopefully we're going to get some swift justice on this. I know it's like over a month away, right? But reality of things, it's going to be here before we know it. Okay, so let's talk about this for a second. First of all, now reports coming from the courtroom is that the family feels like, yes, justice has been done. Yes. As I was following this, and again, like I've told you, I was following it more like through newspapers and reporters and stuff like that, as opposed to how we usually do here at the channel with watching the clips and all that kind of stuff. I would catch bits of what I could when I could, but the judge was like not having it, as far as like being televised and all that type of stuff. So, but I was like getting very nervous because just like when the case went down, some crimes work out to such a degree where the cookie crumbles in such a way that I don't want to say, oh, it's the perfect crime, but it makes it very difficult to get answers. And this was one of those. And because of so much confusion, which can lead to reasonable doubt in a courtroom, I was like, Thank God they came back with these verdicts, though. So far we have had this, like these cases that we have followed for years, and I'm talking about Letitia Stalk, Lori Daybell, and Jacqueline and Trezell West. We are getting conviction after conviction after conviction, and I'm like, thank God, because this one, my personal thoughts, and again, these are just my opinions. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a cop, and not any of that fancy stuff. I 100% think they're guilty. I 100% think they took the lives of these children, and unfortunately they disposed of the bodies in such a way that I don't think they'll ever get a final resting place, which is a travesty in and of itself, right? I don't think that the babies should have ever been taken from the mother. I don't think they would be in this situation if that hadn't happened, and I'm talking about their birth mother. I think it is an absolute travesty all from the start to the finish, and so thank God, because I honestly was like, I don't think they're gonna get found guilty on this. Thank God the children got up there and testified. I think they would have walked on a lot of this had that not happened, because the water was so murky, and even with some of the testimony coming from the kids of like what the contradictions and stuff like that. I mean, again, when you have witnesses that are children who are also having to be like in an area and like testifying against who they know is, you know, their parents. I can't imagine doing that. I cannot imagine, because look at the devastation that's been left behind. Now, again, do I think that these children would have been safe with these two people? And no, obviously. But nonetheless, like, all these lives are disrupted, and at the end of it, Classic and Cincere, you know, number one, were taken from their mother and then murdered by these people. It is absolutely horrible. So the fact that they weren't able to get, you know, the major conviction on for Orson, it's sad, it's a travesty, but we got the one for his brother. It's like his brother's case was able to speak louder and get that conviction for both of them. I hope the judge throws the book at them. I hope they never see the light of day again, because so much of this, the way that this went down, my opinion is that the boys had been deceased for a while before that phone call was made. In December, and I think that it was basically their backs were probably against the wall, and it was like, this has to pop off now. This is our story, you know, thing, right? Holidays are coming up, and maybe that's what it was. Like, okay, people are gonna want to know, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, where are the boys? Because that was another thing that was so weird, is like when you started connecting stories of who's actually seen these boys last, and again, very murky. It's so unfortunate. Number one, thank God that neighbor had that video camera. If you haven't followed this, a neighbor had a video camera that, I mean, when I tell y'all the dissection of the videotape on there that went on in the internet when this took place, I mean, my goodness. But again, thank God for this. You know, and that's the thing in this day and age. I mean, I have so many Ring cameras at my house, right? It's like, even out here in the woods, right? Like, it's like you're being watched anywhere you go. You know what I'm saying? This is a good thing for situations like this. My heart breaks for their mother, Classic and Cincere's mother. Absolutely broke for her. Obviously I didn't know about these people before this case happened, right? But just hearing the whole thing, my heart breaks for her. This is so absolutely upsetting. This should have never have happened. These boys should be alive and should be, you know, getting ready to go to the beach or something, whatever they, you know, their family does for the summertime, right? This should never have happened. So we are 100% on pins and needles for the sentencing, and praying that the judge throws the book at these two monsters. You know, to get up there and do that interview like they did, and the things that were coming out of like Trezell's mouth, like, those are our boys, you know, and all this kind of stuff, knowing they were never coming home, calling 911, going through all that, trying to blame neighbors, all of it. Absolutely a level of depravity that sadly we're used to seeing in these headlines these days. I don't know what it is that is going on out there, that it's just these commonplace headlines like this, where these people do these horrible things to their children, to their loved ones, and to complete strangers. It is so utterly sad, and again, in this case, 2 little boys' lives have been lost. So that's it. Again, we'll follow this. We'll wait for the verdict. I'm sorry, the sentencing to come out, and then we'll talk about that again. So that's it. I hope everybody is having a good morning. I hope you are enjoying your coffee, and until we gather around the camera and the coffee again, I'll see you soon.